on Dave for news and commentary on tech. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, SD. Appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome. I'm really glad that I finally got a fellow podcaster on after how long now? So after many episodes, I've been interviewing founders, a lot of business owners, or even just authors, but I've not had a fellow podcaster on yet. Well,
first time for everything. I'm happy to be the first one then for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you are. So let's just go into some quick chat about the tech layoffs. I believe you covered on your podcast about the many different companies laying off their workers. And what is it about, how about you just, delivering the news in that sense?
Well, the story itself, what's interesting is, so if you look at the news, they've been covering how many of these companies have done a lot of layoffs. And I want to point out by saying, for each individual person that's been affected by this, that's a traumatic experience, and I want to acknowledge that. But it's not the actual story. In tech, it's only 1.8% unemployment as of the latest analysis coming out just in the past couple of days. The overall market in the US has only got 3.4% unemployment. And if we look at the companies that are doing those layoffs, it only rolls them back to roughly early last year in terms of their actual hiring, because many of them overhired. So the actual story to this and why I cover it, what I do in my section called Why Do We Care, is to try and put some perspective on that. A bunch of large tech companies made bad decisions about growing too fast, and now they're backing off of that. But in the larger space of technology, particularly when we look at all of these services companies, there's a lot of availability, and their customers are also really hiring. So from my perspective, I'm telling my listeners, look, hire, lean into this. Those people that are laid off are good tech workers. Go get them and fill your open spots.
Yeah, especially other industries are now looking to hire tech workers, especially now that they need to have their IT systems and their tech systems managed properly well.
Exactly.
So I think that, because I've outside of this podcast, I do work in tech, but for an for a major insurance company, and so that I feel like there's always those industries out there. You don't have to live in a tech bubble to be able to do a tech job. So I've kind of learned that, working with a insurance company, let's just say, if I want to disclose it, it's nationwide.
Yeah, sure.
So it's kind of like, it's a different world when you're just only doing tech job for a company that is not tech centric.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so that's the space that I like to think about. And so for me, it's an element of taking these stories and trying to put them into the context of those companies that are delivering technology services. So the services companies that are around this. The stat I always like to throw out is for every $1 of Microsoft revenue, there's $8 done through their partners. A lot of that is services. It's all the services of implementation and maintenance and keeping those systems up and running and training, all the stuff around that. And that's the bit that I find most interesting and the stuff that I cover on my show.
Why do a lot of news stories pretty much hype up these layoffs as if that's the worst thing ever? They coined the phrase "rich session," and
they're good. They make good headlines, right? They make really good headlines, and it's been my experience that generally the business and technology press like startups exclusively. They like public companies. They like big tech. They like consumer tech. But oftentimes the actual stuff around services, they're just not that interested into. But it's a bigger story. It's a bigger market. It's much more interesting. It's for the actual bit of it. That's why I spend my time working on it, because I think it's much more interesting. These kind of quote unquote boring areas of the market, wow, they're way more profitable and way more interesting.
Yeah, they always say, it's just so really fascinating how when you look at news that says, oh, there's many people being laid off, yet the unemployment rate for tech is 1.8%. It's just, it feels like as if there is a dystopic vision happening in front of you.
Well, they're trying to get attention, and I get all that. And oftentimes it's more difficult to tell comprehensive stories over time. But I can complain about that problem, or I can work on it, which is literally why I created the podcast, saying I'm going to take a different perspective of this and try and be the advisor to these services organizations.
So in terms of what you're doing with your podcast, it's very, you mentioned earlier you do 5-minute news and commentary together, or is it how long is it per each episode?
Yeah, each episode is anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes usually. And it comes out every business day. I do cover anywhere between 2 and 4 stories. And I do it in two parts. I do the news story, and then I do a segment called Why Do We Care? And where I'm commenting on why I thought this story was important, why I want to put some context around it, why I selected it, what I think the action might be from it, and what you can take away from that. So it's an analysis, my analysis, based on 20 plus years of experience in this space. I was a managed services provider. I ran an IT services company myself for a decade, and I led I worked with two software companies and helped bring them to their eventual acquisitions. We sold the first run around, and then I went to another company and we sold that one as well. So
you did when you joined those two companies, were they like startups or they were like actual, they were profitable companies?
They were profitable companies, and then we took them and grew them to their sale, to their next to the next stage in life.
Well, and so let me get to know more about you, Dave. As we've discussed more about your podcast, your ability to basically convey the news in short snippets. Let's get to know more about Dave, the tech guy. Like, how did you really how did you end up being in the tech field itself?
Oh, I knew I was going to be in computers since I was little. When I had my first computer was a Commodore 64, which I still even keep in my studio, when I was like 6 years old. And
I thought that was at first I thought that was a background. At first.
No, this is an actual real studio. This is my real studio. And that was my first computer. Learned to program on it. Then I took classes in high school on an Apple II GS. That's the other one that I keep in my office. When I learned Pascal, and I have a degree in computer science. I actually graduated with a degree in computer science. And if you'd asked college me, I would have thought I'd be building products and being a developer for my career. But after writing a couple of startups in the late 90s and early aughts, I kind of learned that the owners got the golden parachutes, and they got the ability to control their destinies a little bit more. And so I launched my first company in 2002, and it was an IT services focused firm. And I wanted to help small businesses with their technology implementations, and that was my first business, and I ran that for a decade.
And so how did you started in 2002, which was at the tail end of the .com bubble burst?
Yep.
So was that a major factor in influencing you to create that firm?
Well, absolutely. I mean, as I said, I rode two startups down in flames, and I realized that there was two kind of core bits to that. The first was, you actually have to run a good business with a good idea. And the second is that those in leadership and those in sales kept their jobs longer. And I even quipped on the day that I got laid off from that second startup. I said, I'm smarter than those guys. I can run a bad company into the wall just as easily as they can. And so I set out to build a better company, and that was my IT services firm, which of course, was 10 years later, I successfully sold it.
Yeah, that's a very that's one I could tell is like that. Those kinds of companies are what are always stable compared to the actual tech companies that get popped up.
Well, my statement on this is I think any company that actually focuses on the basics will do well. You have to generate revenue. You have to manage costs. You have to be profitable. I get the idea of taking a company, doing investment, and getting it to profitability, but that isn't infinite, and you have to work on that. And you have to work on that from day one, and you have to have a plan to get to that. And and there's this kind of idea that investors are smarter or better than the rest of us. No, they're not. They're just gamblers, right? And they don't talk about all the times they screwed up and they lost a bunch of money. They only like to talk about the occasional success. I like to look at it from the entrepreneurial side and say, no, you've got to build a business that is intended to get to profitability as quickly as possible. That's important.
In the last, since the post.com bust, when basically a lot of major social media companies came to the foray, and a lot of what I call the gig economy platforms like Uber and all that stuff, they've always said that the first couple of years it's okay to operate on loss as long as you make a profit afterwards. So what was the reason why people believe that, that is okay? You've always said that profitability is important whenever for a business to operate, but some of these companies...
Because everyone likes a get-rich-quick scheme. They do. And it sounds really good, right? To say, you can operate at a loss. No, you can't. Not really. You can't forever. You have to have a distinct plan to get to that. And if your business particularly you look at some of these businesses. Uber's a great example, right? If you're hemorrhaging money on subsidizing rides, at some point that breaks. At some point it doesn't work anymore. You better have a plan for when it doesn't work anymore. You can't do that for infinity. At least in the vast majority of businesses, and I like that because I focus on the small to mid-sized companies, right? Like, those companies that are not going to be $10 billion organizations. The vast majority of particularly the U.S. economy is driven by small businesses. This is all just a fallacy for those businesses. You don't get to play in a world where you just hemorrhage money. You got to be profitable. You got to run a good business. That's the majority of what happens. It's kind of boring, right? Because it's the slow grind of getting to profitability in a stable company, but it's the actual real work.
Yeah, that pretty much determines the survivability of a business. I mean, there's always that moment where you have the founder that does all the branding and marketing of the company, goes out there and says, "This is my company, I'm building it," and then behind the scenes you have a co-founder who's more analytical, who says, "Okay, our company needs to grow. Our company needs to grow and stay profitable if we want to go further." So it's kind of like you need a yin and it's kind of like a yin and the yang in a way.
Well, I think it's actually almost three parts to it. Like I think that what I would do is a bit of a triangle. You need someone that can run operations. You need a product person, and then you also need somebody that can sell it. That's really the three basic pieces. They can live within the same human, but they are three distinct roles oftentimes. And as an organization scales up, it has to address all three parts of that.
And so about your podcast, you say you started this 3 years ago and, right? And
yep. Started 3 years ago as an audio podcast. We launched the YouTube versions of it about 2 years ago and have been focused on growing this out the whole time.
So what made you decide to go from audio to video?
So it's the element of I like to appeal to people on their terms, right? So, I mean, in a way, I actually would sort of go through my old schools. I used to be a blogger, right? A bit of a writer, but I saw the transition to audio. I've always enjoyed, I've got a college radio background. I've always enjoyed presenting. Audio was a good way to get out initially. And then I said, YouTube is the obvious next step. And particularly if I was a 20-something or 30-something in IT services starting my business, I'd be looking online, right? I'd be looking for people. I'd be looking for videos and audio podcasts to help educate me. And I said, I need to find the listeners on their terms where they are. And so that's both of those realms.
And so give me a typical day on how you start this podcast. How do you operate the podcast? So you say you start with 5 days a week, 5 minutes, just talking about news and commentary. I want to get to know more.
So every day, so from my perspective, I'm spending 2 to 2.5 hours writing and analyzing to create that 5 minutes. I am parsing some 1,500 news sources that I read on a daily basis. I am distilling that down to find out the trends. And I think the real value that I'm bringing to it is my depth of knowledge plus the curation, right? I am pulling together and analyzing, saying, okay, this story has been written about 10 different times, 5 different ways. Let me pull it together and I'll give you, today it's maybe the Axios version combined with one from the Washington Post, compared with a Wired analysis, that we combine it together to try and get a complete picture. It's that curation that matters. So every single day I'm sitting down, I'm sitting in I'm a little old school and I like Word. I sit in a Word document and I write it all out and I write this.
Not a Google Doc guy anymore.
I'm old school. I like Word. I still do. And so I'll do my writing in Word and I'll pull it all together and I write a script and then then I'm delivering that script. I record it in the studio. I pull it together to get the audio tight, make sure that you can get it a very crisp and tight 5 to 7 minutes.
So what are the typical topics you cover for each of these?
It changes a little bit. So for example, during the pandemic, I was talking a lot about the changes to work. It was something that we were tracking a lot, the opportunities around it, particularly because anybody in technology, it was a technology-driven trend. The ability to work remotely, but more importantly, not just like using Zoom, but how do managers and organizations be effective with that? A lot that's been diminishing as we're getting smarter with that. But I've been, in the past, obviously 2 or 3 months, been covering a lot of AI, right? That's been an area where we've already seen not just the release of things like ChatGPT, but actually the impact that's having on work. I was tracking latest stats where over a third of employees are actually now using ChatGPT in their job. Well, that's a fast adoption rate. They hit 1 million users faster than anything. That has downstream consequences, to organizations thinking about their legal coverage and their intellectual property rights and how they're going to be managing people's time and what the innovation is around that. That's an area to cover. So I cover a lot of that stuff. Security is a constant discussion. How that all works. Legislation that's moving through the various levels of the state and federal. I
believe you covered many different things, including let's just say for a tech executive going to congressional hearings, or let's just say a new technology pops out of nowhere, is it being adopted like ChatGPT? Like, what was that first real experience like when you covered ChatGPT?
Well, so obviously I saw it released the first time as anybody, but I immediately said, I want to wait a moment before I cover this. I'm not going to just say this is a cool new thing that's out there. I want to understand the impact. For me, the first time we started really digging into it was when I started seeing adoption rate numbers, both on the number of users and the number of businesses that have employees reporting that they're using it on their job. That was for me the moment of, okay, we want to lean into this because that's happening in the world of business that these technology providers need to be involved with.
And so, because one thing about AI that I've been wanting to say is that, my professor back in graduate school, one of my professors has said that, the future, when AI comes into fruition, all the jobs that are, that can be done by hand will go away. And then also which can be done, even basic jobs, or even, let's just say now with ChatGPT, like written, like basically more complex writing, more complex level of coding and everything, that can also be, those types of tasks can be outsourced to AI. So eventually when you get to the bottom of it, the only things left that you can do the only things that you can do in a way where you're not going to be threatened by AI is some things that only humans can do, which is connection and building, doing things where only humans can understand that. So is like, even let's just say, also another thing is like, there's always those two things where there's mechanics and handcrafted related products. So I think is there a trend where humans will be more attracted to, like, all I want to do, let's say I want Dave's new form of new printed pottery. Like Dave is gonna shape his new form of pottery that he will sell it to the market. So I want to buy that. So is that kind of like what the future is in a nutshell? Like people are wanting more authentic human stuff?
There's a lot to unpack there. So oftentimes, most of the time of the transformation with these technologies tends to actually create jobs. Everyone focuses on the job destruction idea. What really ends up happening is the creation of new jobs. Let's take a really simple example that we can all kind of wrap our head around. The conversion from the horse and buggy to the car, right? Everyone talked about, what's going to happen to all the horses? What's going to happen to all of the stable people? Those all transform. The creation of the car not only created job roles specifically around the car, like mechanics and road construction, but it created whole new areas of work that weren't even possible before. We needed the car, right, to enable to consolidate down commerce and create the mall, right? We needed the car in order to create fast food and drive-through restaurants. We needed the car to create the ability to move people faster around and move them in the reach of jobs so you could be a consultant much further, transform transportation. We oftentimes can't see all of the secondary effects of a transformational technology. So AI is a great example of this, right? Yeah, sure. Do I think that there's going to be some job change around certain technologies, particularly maybe coding? Yeah, maybe. But what I also see is I know that we're not going to be able to identify all of the new things that are possible because of that change. And if we go and look at most technologies, the vast majority of the trend is job creation. It's just new kinds of jobs and new kinds of skills. So we do need to go back and we need to make sure that we're helping workers transform.
And so do you feel like the future of of the workforce. I mean, even today, people are like upgrading their skill sets to a different way of into a different career. So I think there's a saying that a human now, like a person nowadays, has up to 5 careers happening in their lifetime.
Right.
And it's coming in a way that, you know, it's rapidly, like the world is rapidly changing. People are trying to adapt back and forth and back and forth. So does it feel like humans are going to be adapting to having like maybe 8 or 9 careers, or like they'll be able to have multi skills?
Maybe. In my thinking on it is that it's much harder to go from 1 to 2 than it is 2 to 4. So and what I mean by that is in a world, you know, we go back in time a little bit and we talk to our grandparents or great-grandparents, and they did one career their entire job, or the entire life. It is very, very difficult to take someone who's done one thing and teach them their second thing. But learning the second to the third is easier because you've got that skill of, hey, I've gone through this once before, and it is a lot less scary. So going from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, that's not nearly as hard because people get used to learning that way. And any of us that have been involved in technology know that we've been doing that training and that investment pretty regularly our entire careers. Then, you know, you're always having to learn a set of new technical skills to be relevant in the technology market. This is another offshoot of that. Now, I do think that we as a society ought to invest in making it easier for people to do that, but it's a skill we're getting a lot better with.
Yes, I mean, I guarantee you. I not only have a day job in this podcast, but I have other skill sets that require sometimes my attention. But I feel like I've gotten better with balancing different kinds of skill sets into one. Like let's just say 5 or 6 or 7 different kinds of careers coming in front of me right now. So I think there's a thing, like in the business world, there's a saying like people want multiple streams of income. So it's kind of like the same thing in the tech, or let's just say in the career world, that you want multiple skills to, you know, be able to say that, okay, if this skill does not work, then you can just rely on another skill to keep you going.
Well, right. And learning new skills is a skill. And the more you practice it, the better you are at doing it, and the easier it becomes over time.
And so now about your podcast, like, why do you feel like it's important that, you know, why do you feel like it's important to condense so many news stories out there into 5-minute snippets?
Well, technology services is really hard. I love the space, but it's a difficult business. You've got the technologies changing all the time. You've got security threats. You have legislation threats, compliance threats. There's a lot going on. And so what I looked at, you know, knowing from my own time, being one of these providers as well as working with them on the software side, is their time is their most precious resource. And if I can spend my time and offer the value of curation to give them, here's some insights, here's the particular focus, I've done the research, and I'm bringing to you the best stories, and here's why I think they're important, that's of high value. And so that for me is always the mantra, is what can I do every single day to help providers that are delivering IT services be better at their job every single day.
And so in terms of you cover a lot of remote work and hybrid work and and return to office topics. Like, in your mind, what is really happening with returning to work and hybrid work?
It's a fascinating space, right? And everyone always likes to talk about, like, thinking of it was like, well, Zoom or Google Meet or all of those were the catalysts. And no, what actually is more interesting about it is the transformation it's having on workers themselves, both their empowerment as individuals in the way they work with it, but also the skills required to manage workers. I can tell you that more than anything else, the success or failure of remote work comes down to, do these organizations have good management systems in place to manage people? And are they teaching their managers how to do so in a remote world? Because the skills are a little bit different. They're not exactly the same. And you can't be quite as lackadaisical about it by just sort of wandering the office. That old Lumbergh from Office Space reference, right? Where he wanders cubicle to cubicle. That doesn't work in a remote-only environment or remote-focused environment. So you actually have to be much more intentional about building those one-on-one relationships. And you can see it in the data. The organizations that are outperforming on remote are the ones that are leaning into one-on-one meetings, that are leaning into those much tighter individual relationships than trying to have as many meetings as possible. So for me, the reason to focus here is not that it's technology enabled, but it's made successful by those intentional choices of the organizations to do it well. And it's a skill to teach that, and it's an ability to make money by helping organizations be successful.
Like, if remote work and remote management is a usually more effective way on getting productivity going up, why is it that a lot of companies want their people back into the office, even though like there's a higher share of productivity that took place at home versus the office in a way?
Yeah, lazy management. I mean, really almost can boil it down to lazy management. They have to change the way they've been doing things for a long time. That takes effort, and it's easy to fall back into old habits. Shockingly, you look at a lot of the people that are pushing back with this. These are leaders who tend to have really comfortable environments where perhaps their commute isn't very hard. They have childcare taken care of. They're very successful in life. They have good space themselves. Like, they're not doing a great job of understanding the appeal on the other side, and it's just easy for them to default back into these old patterns. Well, the market is proving that you don't necessarily get to do that. Castle released their latest data on office occupancy. It's only about half full. It's about 50%, and it's been that way since September. We're falling into a norm here.
So it's like the future is remote.
Yeah, the future is dispersed. Right. The idea is and this has all kinds of perks. You can hire from anywhere. You can find talent where it lives. You can be more flexible with the way you work. We're seeing, the investments in the 4-day work week. This is another area that I track a lot on. And we've got lots of initial research showing that companies can maintain the same level of productivity and profitability by moving to a 4-day work week than a 5-day work week. But it's an intentional choice, and you have to invest in transforming to it. It has upside, and those organizations are able to be more competitive by doing so, but you have to break old habits. And that's hard. People don't like change.
The funny thing is that there's a lot of managers out there who were basically forced out of, we had the pandemic for 2-3 years now. Let's just say, in official terms, it's still ongoing, but let's just say for at least 2 years, people had the freedom to work from home. And managers were supposed to spend those 2 years trying to adapt to those changes, yet for some reason they were not able to adapt in ways that the cause why people are saying we got to get back to the office, we got to get productivity going up again.
Well, some of them have. Some of those organizations have adapted and have really embraced it, and they've become quite good at doing it. And you can see lots of organizations have had very profitable quarters through this time. They have figured this out. But oftentimes the success stories are not nearly as interesting as the resistance ones. So it's oftentimes easier to talk about the things that aren't working than the ones that are, but there's been a lot of transformation here.
And so with your company's practically kind of like a hot mix and match, right?
Well, I mean, obviously I'm also a small business. It's a small media company trying to produce. I'm the main employee for the organization.
So you already got the freedom anyways.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So my organization is a little different, but I'm taking advantage of all the remote capability. I have people that I work with that are distributed, that on the West Coast, that are in Asia, that are in Europe. Like, I work with people all over the world in order to enable what I'm doing.
Cool. And so in the coming years, what do you see going in the IT world in the coming years, and especially for your podcast? You said you're gonna be you're looking to become one of the leading news providers for tech. You're trying to break it down to small snippets.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of smile and go, world domination, right? You want to be I want my podcast to get consumed by anybody in the delivery of IT services. Like, this is a space that I love. I want to be involved with doing that and helping these business owners every single day. I think there's tons of interesting things to cover and tons of topics to talk about. Again, it's a challenging business, but easy things aren't where profitability is. There's money to be made in hard problems. So I like tackling them, and I like having conversations about them.
And so some of these conversations, do you feel like you can become more of the main area for tech news, tech-centric news?
Sure. I mean, I comparing against what I used to do. So I spent, my last two roles, I was focused on education enablement of IT services companies. And I was I'm a million miler on United Airlines, which is not one of those things that you do, because I flew around every single year and I did 100,000 miles going and talking to people at trade shows. And I look at what I'm doing now, and I'm able to talk to more people and have much more reach without having to pound the road. And I'm embracing those digital technologies. And I think that's the joy of what I'm up to now, is the ability to help more organizations without having necessarily to present to every single room on the planet. Now I can do it in a much more targeted, deliberate way and deliver better value, because I can do all of the research and the writing and the culling down of all the information and deliver it in a concise manner.
Well, at least we can finally bring down business travel.
Well, or make where it makes sense. I'm not saying I'm never going to travel for business, but at the same time, I can deliver many more messages in a much more targeted way through this medium.
Cool. And so I'm just going to wrap up our chat by asking this final question, which is, as you're an entrepreneur yourself, you're a podcast host, and also you're the owner of an IT services firm, right? Or is it? I think that's
former owner. I don't currently own that business. Yeah.
Okay. So, what advice would you give to people who have a mission and a vision to accomplish something?
Focus. It's all about focus. I mean, every single day is about what is the best use of your time that you can maximize your impact on a daily basis. And I think people are not nearly as deliberate with their time as they often need to be. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that. What is the best use of your time? Where can you make the biggest impact? And keeping focus. Don't get distracted by all those shiny objects, because you can waste a lot of time chasing the shiny.
All right, cool, Dave. Thank you so much for coming on the Next in Time podcast, and we wish you the best with your podcast, and hopefully this will hit the charts soon.
ST, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.